Hello, and welcome to Plato's Words. These next episodes will be on the Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, spelled Phaedo. These 3 books changed my life. It really helped me through a tough situation. It was like perfect timing. I read this, then I was able to relate the knowledge to my circumstances, and it saved my life really. Well, that's another story, but for now, let's start on the Apology. Plato's Apology is an account of the speech Socrates gives in his defense during his trial in 399 BC. The title Apology comes from the Greek word apologia, meaning defense speech, rather than an expression of regret. Socrates stands before an Athenian jury, accused of corrupting the youth and impiety, not believing in the gods of the city. Throughout the dialogue, Socrates defends himself, challenges his accusers, and ultimately maintains his philosophical integrity despite facing the death penalty. Structure of the Apology. The dialogue can be divided into 3 main sections. Socrates Defense, main speech. The verdict and sentencing proposal. Socrates' final words before death. 1. Socrates Defense, main speech. Then, opening remarks. Socrates begins by addressing the jury and distinguishing himself from his accusers. He acknowledges that he is not a skilled orator in the traditional sense, but insists that he will speak the truth. His goal is not to use rhetorical tricks, but to defend himself honestly and directly. Refuting the older accusations. Socrates first responds to older prejudices against him. Many Athenians have long viewed him as a dangerous thinker, a natural philosopher who questions traditional beliefs. These suspicions were fueled in part by Aristophanes' comedic play The Clouds, which depicted Socrates as a sophist who corrupts the youth and studies the heavens. Socrates was considered a troublemaker. He would approach a so-called expert on a subject, then embarrass them. By deductive reasoning, asking leading questions, he would prove they were not experts, even ignorant. This eventually earned him many powerful enemies. Socrates clarifies that he is not a sophist, a teacher who charges money for wisdom, and has never claimed to possess great knowledge. Instead, he explains the origin of his philosophical mission, the Oracle of Delphi and Socratic ignorance. Socrates recounts how his friend Chaerephon once asked the Oracle of Delphi whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. The oracle responded that no one was wiser. Perplexed, Socrates began questioning various figures in Athens, politicians, poets, and craftsmen, to understand the oracle's meaning. He discovered that those who claimed wisdom were often ignorant, while those who truly possessed skill, such as craftsmen, were only knowledgeable in their own domain. From this, Socrates concluded that true wisdom lies in recognizing one's own ignorance. This idea, known as Socratic ignorance, became a central theme of his philosophy, defending against corruption and impiety charges. Socrates then addresses the formal charges against him. Corrupting the youth, Socrates argues that he does not intentionally corrupt anyone. If he did, he would be harming himself by harming the society in which he lives. Since no one willingly harms themselves, his actions must be unintentional. And if unintentional, they do not deserve legal punishment, but rather correction. Impiety, not believing in the gods of the city. Socrates refutes this by pointing out the contradiction in Meletus' accusations. Meletus claims that Socrates does not believe in any gods, yet also accuses him of introducing new divine entities, daimons. Socrates argues that belief in spiritual matters inherently implies belief in divine beings. Socrates' fearlessness in the face of death. Socrates refuses to change his ways to avoid execution. He states that he will continue his philosophical mission because obeying the gods and seeking truth is more important than fearing death. He likens himself to a gadfly that stirs the sluggish horse of Athens, urging it to self-examination. He also dismisses the idea that he should be ashamed of his lifestyle, arguing that pursuing virtue and wisdom is the highest calling. He believes that fearing death is a sign of ignorance, as no one truly knows whether death is a good or bad thing. He goes on to prove the soul is eternal. He explains the opposites of night and day, hot and cold, and many other themes of nature that imply that life is the complement of death and that the soul is therefore eternal. He says he believes death will just be another state of being. 2. The verdict and sentencing proposal. The jury's verdict. The jury finds Socrates guilty, but the vote is relatively close. In Athenian trials, both the prosecution and the defendant propose a punishment, and the jury chooses between them. Socrates' counterproposal. Instead of proposing exile or a severe punishment, Socrates provocatively suggests that he should be rewarded with free meals at the Prytaneum, an honor typically reserved for Olympic victors and public benefactors. This angers the jury, and he then reluctantly suggests a fine, which his followers, including Plato, offer to pay. However, the jury instead sentences him to death. 3. Socrates' final words before death. Rejecting the fear of death. Socrates remains calm and composed, stating that he does not fear death. He reiterates that avoiding wrongdoing is more important than avoiding death. He asserts that his conviction is a result of the jury's misunderstanding rather than any true guilt on his part. A philosophical view on death. Socrates presents two possibilities regarding death. A dreamless sleep. If death is like a deep, undisturbed sleep, then it is peaceful and nothing to be feared. A journey to another world. If death leads to another realm where he can converse with great figures like Homer, Hesiod, and Achilles, then it is a great opportunity. Either way, death is not a misfortune, and he does not regret living according to his principles. A final warning to his accusers. Socrates warns those who condemned him that, by silencing him, they have not stopped philosophy. Others will continue his work, possibly even more forcefully. A message to his friends. To his followers, he offers words of encouragement, urging them to care for their souls and pursue wisdom. He also requests that his sons be held accountable if they stray from virtue. Final words. Socrates ends by saying, "The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways, I to die, and you to live. Which is better? Only the gods know." Themes in the Apology. The nature of wisdom. Socratic wisdom is recognizing one's own ignorance. The role of the philosopher. The philosopher's duty is to question, challenge, and seek truth, even at personal risk. Virtue versus death. Socrates prioritizes virtue over personal safety, demonstrating moral integrity. Justice and the state. The trial reflects tensions between individual conscience and societal norms. The fear of death. Socrates teaches that fearing death is irrational, as no one truly knows what lies beyond. My conclusion is, Plato's Apology is a powerful defense of philosophy and intellectual freedom. Socrates, through his fearless reasoning and commitment to truth, remains a timeless symbol of integrity and wisdom. His trial and execution illustrate the conflict between an independent thinker and a society resistant to change. Despite being condemned to death, his legacy has endured, influencing Western philosophy for over 2 millennia. The begging starts off with Socrates in the courtroom defending himself. The second book, Crito or Crito. Socrates is in jail. Crito has bribed the guards and comes to take Socrates down to the docks, where Crito has paid for a ship to take him to another country where he will be safe. Socrates refuses on principle. He said he willingly lived as a citizen of Athens, he knew the laws, he violated them, and wants to honor his society by taking his punishment like a good citizen. Crito was amazed, disappointed, and upset. He had gone to great expense, and Socrates refused to be saved. The next book was Phaedo. In this scene, Socrates is in the courthouse, and they are giving him hemlock to drink. The hemlock will cause him to die. Socrates is pacing back and forth with his two friends, Crito and Phaedo. The guard comes in with a cup of hemlock and tells Socrates to sit down, and if he moves around, the poison will take longer to take effect. Socrates replies, "Then be prepared," to administer more glasses, as Socrates wanted to pace around. He was 86 years old and in good shape. Finally, Socrates starts to get tired. He is telling them how he suspects the soul is eternal and that he is ready to transition to whatever is beyond. Socrates also mentions that he does not agree that there are over 100 gods. He believes there is only one. Socrates' wife comes to see him. Socrates exchanges pleasantries, says goodbye to her. Then she leaves. Later, As he was dying, Phaedo, a handsome young man with curly hair, kneeled at his feet. Socrates complimented him and was running his fingers affectionately through his hair. As he talked philosophically, his last words were to Crito. He said, "I owe Calchas a cock, rooster. Would you see that he is paid?" Crito said, "Yes, Socrates, I will pay him." Calchas was a god, and the rooster was for an offering he owed the god. Then he died.